The Ms. Pac Man arcade machine from 1981 is my favorite video game ever created. The arcade machine. It's the best version of Ms. Pac Man out there because it has the best control, the arcade joystick on the Ms. Pac Man machine. Whether it's the stand-up version or the sit-down cocktail table Ms. Pac Man, that joystick allows precision and fast movement. Essential for playing Ms. Pac Man. I've never played a home console version that matches the arcade machine, but this version of Ms. Pac Man on the Genesis is about as good as it gets. As I'm recording this in 2010, there's been a movement in the last few years to re-release old-school arcade classics in their true old-school form. 2D graphics, keeping it just like the arcade original. In the 90s, there was more of a push to try to reinvent arcade classics, to take the big iconic characters like Ms. Pac Man, Frogger, Centipede, all those guys, and turn them into big goofy 3D adventures or something and kids games, getting away from the actual arcade brilliance of the originals. Even the box for Ms. Pac Man on the Genesis on the back says 36 wild and crazy mazes for more fun than ever. Clearly, these companies felt that consumers wanted more than just recreations of the originals, and at the time they were probably right. But let's be honest, none of these games have benefited from going into 3D graphics. None of them. There have been some interesting tries, like Centipede, Missile Command. They were cool games when re-released in 3D, but different games. Not exactly the same. But while this game has additional mazes, and it even has a strange turbo option so you can make Ms. Pac Man go faster, it doesn't force you to play any of them or use the turbo option. This game cartridge delivers one of the best recreations of Ms. Pac Man on a console, and the additional mazes are actually quite good, because they're not ridiculous. They're extensions of the original mazes. They're slight redesigns of the original mazes. They're not rotating or flipping or throwing in new enemies or goofy crap that ruins the game. They're just different mazes in the same style of old-school arcade Ms. Pac Man. What we're watching now is me play through the standard arcade mode with the original mazes, and as you see on screen, the game looks outstanding. Ms. Pac Man is one of those games that doesn't even need to look that good to be good. I like Ms. Pac Man on the Atari 2600. That's probably the version I've played the most. Ms. Pac Man on the 2600 and 7800. I did not have a Ms. Pac Man machine at home. I wish I did. I don't think my parents were going to buy me a Ms. Pac Man machine back in the day. They were a bit pricey. They still are. I'm playing this with the Sega Genesis gamepad, which works surprisingly well. I typically don't like playing Ms. Pac Man with a gamepad because I actually play the arcade machine with my right hand. I tried playing with the Sega Genesis 6-button arcade stick. It does not work at all for this game. I mean, it works, but it doesn't play right. The standard, old-school 3-button Sega Genesis gamepad is the way to go. What we're looking at here is what they call the big mazes, larger versions based upon the original Ms. Pac Man mazes. What's fun about playing these is that I haven't played them 1,000 times before, so I have to come up with some new strategies, new lines of attack, and you probably noticed that you can't see the entire Ms. Pac Man playing field all at once on screen. Ms. Pac Man traditionally has a vertical screen layout. I think they've done a nice job with scrolling the playing field, making it fit into a 4x3 window. Sometimes it's a little awkward when you don't know where all of the ghosts are. You'd like to know where they all are at all times. But as I've said, nothing's perfect unless it's the arcade machine. Preferably the sit-down cocktail table version, so you could drink with your left hand while controlling Ms. Pac Man with your right hand. And then you could put your beer or your Mountain Dew or whatever you're drinking at the time right next to the playing field. Right there, if you know the experience I'm talking about, it's a feeling that you can't put into words. Because it's gone now. No games do this anymore. Alright, enough nostalgia, but just look at the quality of these extended, larger mazes. This Ms. Pac Man game cartridge for the Genesis can be found fairly easily. It doesn't cost all that much. While this certainly is not a replacement for having your very own stand-up or sit-down Ms. Pac Man machine, the excellent variety of mazes certainly makes it worth owning. You see that in some of the mazes, there's these cool new sections which are just slightly longer, enough to easily get trapped in there if you're not careful. Very cool. I'm really impressed by this game. I wish they'd actually pack all of these mazes in with some of the newer re-releases on like Xbox Live. The good news is it's so popular that you'll still frequently find stand-up Ms. Pac Man / Galaga machines out there. There's not as many of these sit-down cocktail tables, but the stand-up ones can still be found at amusement parks, bars, and of course Ms. Pac Man is available for just about every game console ever. Except for the Magnavox Odyssey 2. You had to go with Casey Munchkin. Ah, good old Casey. Everybody thinks Pac Man Jr. was Pac Man's son. Nope.